Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Peace Show, a half-hour space to talk about anything related to promoting disarmament, promoting peace, diplomacy, social justice, conflict resolution, and all things related. I'm Mary Sanders, your guest host for this month. If there are others interested in hosting, we'll be providing information later in the show as to who to contact. And if you're with a peace-related group and you're interested in coming in for an interview, you can also contact us. Today we have guests who will be discussing an organization that I've been happy to collaborate with over the last year. Our guests are Jim Brazel and Matt Southworth from the Connecticut Chapter 42 of Veterans for Peace. Jim, would you introduce yourself briefly? Tell us where you're from, where you served, and a little bit about yourself.
Okay, yeah, sure. Jim Brazel from New Britain, Connecticut, presently in Newington with my wife Elaine. We have 5 grandkids. When I was 17 years old, going to New Britain High School, I signed up for the Marines. 18, I was in Vietnam, Paris Island. 19 in Vietnam, and I was home before I was 20. Now with Veterans for Peace and what has been going on in our country, I've been involved with Veterans for Peace, and I kind of extend it by saying, gee, by 50 or 60, I started being very concerned about our country. So I kind of maybe got more involved with Veterans for Peace. Sandy Hook happened, and I saw a combination of militarism in our society. I have grandkids now, and now that's why I'm working for peace nonviolently through this organization.
Thank you. Thank you for doing what you do and for sharing some time with us today. Matt, can you tell us about your background?
Sure. Served in the U.S. Army, joined right out of college, did a tour of duty in Iraq, Northern Iraq, Mosul, Tal Afar in 2004, was honorably discharged in August of 2004, and I've been a veteran working for peace ever since. I serve on the National Board of Directors of Veterans for Peace. This is my second time serving on the board. I've also been a Quaker peace lobbyist in Washington, D.C. I worked for 6 years lobbying Congress and war, and more importantly, speaking to hundreds, if not thousands, of young people, college and high school students, and teaching them the importance of lobbying and having a voice in their democracy in order to end war, because I feel like the best way to honor veterans is to make sure there are no more wars.
I'm very happy to hear people doing anti-recruitment activities. I worked with a group called Youth for Peace maybe 15 years ago, and that was part of what we did at New Britain High School, actually.
Okay.
Some anti-recruitment activities and trying to have them consider other career options that were available to them. So that's encouraging. Well, I am somewhat familiar with Veterans for Peace, having participated in numerous of the activities. I also listened to Ralph Nader's promo about a week ago advertising the Veterans for Peace National Conference that just took place this weekend. Were either of you involved in that, or around the planning or attending any of those activities?
Very involved as a member of the board, and also my background is in fundraising, development work for small nonprofits and in higher education. So I bring that experience to the board. We had a really wonderful convention. Hundreds of people attended. We normally have these in person, of course, with COVID and all of the disruptions that happened as a result of that. We've gone online. We hope to be in person again next year. But I can imagine us having a hybrid convention just because it reaches so many more people. So it was a great convention where we were able to talk about the issues of militarism, the issues of climate change, issues of nuclear weapons and nuclear disarmament. And we brought peace activists and others, veterans and associate members from all over the country together. These are people doing really amazing things, organizing in their communities, hosting peace vigils for years and years consistently on a certain day of the week, every week for literally decades. It's incredible what our members are able to do, and it motivated us all to be together.
That's wonderful. Well, that's one of the upside of Zoom meetings, that you can bring in a much more diverse, and widely spread out participants. We've got a little spoiled with the Zoom, so I'm glad to hear that you'll be able to do a hybrid, because that, it's so important to include people that can't get to the conventions. I know that happens with different groups I'm involved in. So, yeah, so it was good to hear about some of the activities going on at the national level. Maybe Jim, you can talk about what's going on at the local level.
Yeah, I will do that. I just wanted to say I was kind of involved in the convention also.
Okay.
Sitting in front of my computer watching it and
All
watching
right.
Matt and all of our board of directors, which are a very intelligent and active board that now, because of some transitions, we are reorganizing. And that, I told Matt just before we started, was the best convention I've seen. It happens to be on Zoom, and I look forward to working with Matt. We've discovered only live half a mile apart from each other.
Okay.
So we need to communicate better, and this is kind of a start to do something like that. So again,
That's wonderful. Well, some of the activities that Matt mentioned, like going out and standing, having rallies and gatherings in public spaces to bring awareness to the atrocities of war and the millions and billions of dollars that's spent on Pentagon budget is something that, I know the local group has done that also. I've been involved in numerous of the vigils and.
yes. I'll tell you what we've done locally in a second, but our group is also the chapter. There's about 150 chapters throughout the world.
Okay.
They have some in Ireland. I believe they had one in the United Kingdom. They have one in Okinawa. And it was interesting to see some of these people coming together. But our group has actually gone down to Washington, D.C. We have a Swords to Plowshares program, which we set up right in front of the Lincoln Memorial. So we've been down there. We've been down there in Baltimore to listen to authors of books that are opposed to the militarization of society. So we've been there. Now, locally, we've done a few things. The past year, because of the Golden Rule,
Right.
which is on an 11,000-mile trip, which started last September. This is a 30-foot sailboat. Started at the top of, after it went by flatbed truck from California, went down the Mississippi River, through the Gulf of Mexico, went to Cuba, Florida, up the East Coast, and it hit Norwalk, New Haven. We tried to get it to Hartford, but because of the bridge in East Haddam, we weren't able to. It went to New London and back up to Maine, all the way up to Maine, and then back down through. It's now up the Hudson River and through the Great Lakes area.
It's amazing.
So it's going to Chicago now. It's not just, it's stopping everywhere to promote the threat of nuclear weapons. And because of what we see going on in Europe, it's very important right now that everyone becomes conscious of that fact. So that's what the Golden Rule promoted.
Right.
When they were there in Connecticut, we were in the Memorial Day Parade in Norwalk. We were in New Haven, had a number of projects related to the Golden Rule when it docked there through the New Haven Peace Council and New Haven Peace Commission, which we work with down there, great people. And of course in Hartford, the Quaker community in Hartford, the Quaker Meeting House in West Hartford helped us out. The Unitarians helped us out, Hartford Unitarian Society. Some of the Hartford Catholic workers helped us out. And in New London, they had basically some of the same people doing that. The War Resistors League was down there. So it taught us a lot about helping each other out and getting together, not only as veterans, but also as kind of spiritual people, people that are nonviolent, and we see a different perspective on war because of what we've gone through.
I was fortunate to be at the Quaker House at the Unitarian House, where I actually was able to get the T-shirt, and you had a good turnout there and good speakers and everything. And then I went to the Peace Vigil in front of the
Old State House. Yeah.
But I was really encouraged that in front of City Hall, when we had our first rally there, that a resolution was read by our Hartford City Council members.
Yes.
And also something from the Connecticut legislature. What was that they issued? Some kind of proclamation?
Yeah, proclamation, yeah. Eric Stam, who was Quaker Meeting House, Wayne Costi, Hope Out Loud, Joe Wasserman, they're all well, Joe is a member. He works on the legislative part of it, does a great job. And now we're organizing a little bit better, and we're asking veterans. That's why we're going to the stand down on September 22nd down in Rocky Hill. Starts at 8, ends at 2.
Right.
And we want to approach veterans that may not be at where we are, but we have things to offer them.
Right, yeah, I see here, I obtained this card. It talks about September 22nd from 8 to 2 in numerous locations, Bridgeport, Bristol, Danbury, Norwalk, and Rocky Hill. So there'll be a lot of access for Connecticut veterans to be matched up with services they might need. And I guess, I don't know, there'll be social service providers there, or...
I've been told we're going to Rocky Hill. We're going to table our information in Rocky Hill, and we're going to tell Rocky Hill and the veterans that show up what Veterans for Peace has to offer them. We do have specific working groups and national projects that focus just on veterans, because we need more veterans in our group. Veterans have a voice, and if they can see how to do it in an educational way, we're to educate people, not militarize people. We think in the long run, it might be better off that way.
Veterans for Peace, I understand, started in Maine. Like how many years ago?
Around 1985, yeah.
1985.
Been around
Wow.
for a good-
So that's been a long, it's a well-established group by now. How many members nationally would you guys estimate?
Tens of thousands. I would,
Tens of thousands.
our mailing list is quite large, and we have associate members as well. So some members are veterans, some members are non-veterans. We work in a large peace community, and we are all working toward a more peaceful world, and that's the important thing.
When you say you work in a larger peace community, and Veterans for Peace is like one cog in the wheel, right? What are some of the other groups that are collaborated with nationally? I know a little bit about local, but nationally, I'm wondering.
Yeah. Well, Code Pink is one that comes to mind. Medea Benjamin, Jody Evans, are stalwart activists, mainly based in D.C., but really all over the country. We've had a relationship with Iraq Veterans Against the War, another group I've been a member of that is now goes by the name of About Face. And we also have worked with many churches, Quaker meetings, Unitarian places of worship, many places like that throughout the country. We build our coalitions from people who understand the message of peace, who understand the detriment of war, and who understand that we are making a political choice. We can choose to have a world with less war or no war. We just have to work toward it.
So maybe you can talk, Jim, about some of the local collaborations. I mean, I know that when the Greater Hartford Cuba Solidarity Committee has activities, sometimes you guys come out, and the Connecticut Peace and Solidarity. But I don't know if you have other like regular collaborations.
When Carmen Wooster got us started here, I did meet her the last time, and when we stood up for the Cuban people that were against sanctions on Cuba over at Central Connecticut State University, and that's when she mentioned, hey, we should go down to the stand down and do this. Now, this was a couple years ago, so it's taken us some time to do it. And it was interesting to note that, it's interesting to get veterans involved down there through what Veterans for Peace can do. I'll just mention very quickly some of the working groups that we're going to offer to those veterans down there. We have a Save Our VA working group, which is kind of self-explanatory. We believe that the VA works to very efficiently the way it is right now without privatizing it for profit. It works fine. I go to the VA in Newington. no problem. We'll be down West Haven if you need an operation or something.
Have there been rumors of trying to
Yes.
privatize?
Oh,
I
yes.
have not heard that.
Many years. Yes.
Oh, that's disheartening.
And yeah,
The privatization of healthcare in general is
Right.
is disheartening, right?
Absolutely.
But yes, for sure, the VA, it is certainly the dream of many politicians to privatize the VA,
All right,
and
so
that's
you
something
have
we stand
A
against.
working group just for that
yes.
issue. That's
yes.
great. And what else?
And that's why the more veterans we have here in Connecticut, they can pick between these working groups what they want to focus on.
Okay.
We also have a military trauma working group. And just quickly, it says our role as Veterans for Peace who hate war is to speak truth to the causes of veterans' psychological pain and work to eliminate it. That's the military trauma working group. So we'll offer that to them. We have a homeless veterans working group.
Oh, that's encouraging.
To act as a vehicle in aiding all chapters of Veterans for Peace and support that they can use to help homeless veterans and their families in the area. Now, we haven't been able to do that much because we don't have the manpower right now. But between the old guys and the newer guys, maybe we can get that momentum going. And, our overall goal is to not have any more veterans, to
Right.
maybe look at a situation where we don't create more needs to spend tax dollars on veterans issues, which is a whole show in itself. There's also a deported veterans advocacy project. All right, sometimes when a veteran is not a member or is not a citizen, right, and he goes to Iraq or goes to Afghanistan, he does not have any rights. He could be deported.
Wow.
So that's another one we have. An older one we have is the Vietnam Agent Orange Relief and Responsibility Campaign, which older guys may be interested, Vietnam vets. And we have a Veterans for Inner Peace Working Group. The mission statement of this is that it would comply with the Veterans for Peace Statement of Purpose. Our belief is that we can serve the cause of world peace by nurturing peace within ourselves, by cultivating mindfulness practices and deep compassion to share peacefully and respectfully with all society internationally, not just we start with ourselves, I guess, and then we work in our communities and then nationally, and then we expand internationally as opposed to sending the next military vehicle to a problem.
When you said that about nurturing inner peace or developing inner peace, it made me remember one of the videos I watched of Veterans for Peace speaking and talking about the different psychological trauma for the Vietnam veterans in particular. Although all veterans obviously come back with trauma, but the Vietnam veterans, I guess it was a little different for the war was more controversial.
I don't know.
Or
I think
or do you even agree with that statement?
any war is going to create problems. You probably are not going to see it advertised in the New York Times, or I would think. The stuff that most Vietnam veterans went through, I would imagine, is the same that Iraq veterans and Afghanistan vets and anyone that's in the military, the Ukrainians right now, the Russians right now, they are being manipulated by a world about people that benefit from war. And we are there to kind of put our foot in the door.
And let's make it clear, who is it that's benefiting from war? Who are the only players that benefit from war?
Well, we're here to give the information. Figure it out yourself. But there's 3 big companies in Connecticut make an awful lot of money from what's going on. They can do that better if we see what the problem is, and people working there, politicians, people that are concerned about it, can adjust what we're doing and make the world more peaceful.
And it's really concerning for people, you know, when they hear us talking about peace and
Yeah.
stopping, weapon development and shipments all over the place. For people in Connecticut, you had something you wanted to add?
Well, let me just add, yeah, I would love to piggyback on that about, the injuries from war, the unseen injuries. I think it's really important to put this into context. Anytime we do something to dehumanize another person, in an act of war, you are dehumanizing, you're taking the human dignity away from another person. Whether you mean to or want to, if you participate in that system, that is the end result. You also dehumanize yourself a little bit to be able to do that. And the reality is, after Vietnam, maybe post-traumatic stress disorder wasn't widely known or widely accepted. There was a lot of stigma around mental illness. That has shifted a little bit, I think, to the benefit of veterans. But it's really important to take into the context the fact that these are moral injuries. There's no cocktail of pills. There's no easy fix to a moral injury. It takes a lot of self-reflection, self-work, forgiveness, healing, working through the trauma, working through the anger, working through the shame, working through all those feelings. And there's no reason to feel ashamed of that. War is not a natural part of the human condition. That's why basic training, we are conditioned to fire. We are conditioned to fight war. When you're out on the range, a silhouette pops up, you fire. A silhouette pops up, you fire. When we march and sing cadence, it's left, right, left, right, left, right, kill. We are constantly in basic training being surrounded with these messages because we need to be taught to be willing to do this, because literally robbing someone of their humanity robs you of yours as well, and that's a moral injury that only really time and self-reflection and forgiveness can heal.
And how do you turn that off when you come home? How do you turn off all those instincts to lash out? And
a lot of people have a very hard time doing that, and you see the results. Veterans have a higher suicide rate compared to their peers. Veterans have a higher alcoholism rate compared to their peers, higher homelessness rate compared to their peers, and it's a relatively small group, 2%, 4% of people, depending on how you count that in terms of who's deployed or who's been, just in the service but not necessarily deployed. So all those things should be taken into account.
I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier about not having enough manpower, and how do we get, people to join, and there's different levels. People don't necessarily have to be a veteran to join, right? I could join as an associate member. So people keep that in mind. You can join Veterans for Peace even if you are not a veteran. And then also we had spoken briefly about some kind of incentives for teachers with students.
Yes.
That we wanted to bring up before we lose our time.
Our small group in Connecticut, Veterans for Peace, our chapter's 42. We have about 25 paying members, maybe 12, 15 active. And the International Day of Peace is coming up, September 21st.
Right.
We would like the first email that I get, and I think we'll be scrolling along the bottom of this eventually, but I'll mention what my email is. The first teacher, principal that sends me an email that gives me some interest that we can come in and just talk to them. We'll do it from elementary school to college. We'll make it age appropriate. We want to talk about peace. That's September 21st. We also have Veterans Day on the 11th. Veterans for Peace has a program called Reclaiming Veterans Day and calling it Armistice Day, because that was the original intent of November 11th, the end of World War I, is to never have another war. We've lost that. So we want to talk to educators. So if somebody wants to send us and invite us to their class or college, we would be happy. And we also say the Beyond Vietnam speech of Martin Luther King, who said that in 1967 at Riverside Church in New York, was shot a year later on that day. And we would also, if we're invited, if somebody wants to send us an email, and with all of those, we would give them a pizza party.
Oh, that's wonderful. You hear that, educators?
So,
get a pizza party for you.
So we're reaching out, this is not only for veterans, although we need veterans, but it's also for parents. Parents are the ones, and the educators. They're the ones that are working with my grandkids right now as we talk in their schools, and they have to think about peace. We can know the history of wars, but we also need to know the history of peace.
I hear you. I have 8 grandchildren too, and I'm talking to them all the time about staying away from the military because a couple of them are
And thank
in
you
their
for
early
bring-
20s.
And thank you for bringing the 2 young ones to our silent
Oh, yeah,
vigil.
yeah, they're interested in doing some more down the road. Well, and you mentioned Martin Luther King, and I was reminded by the gentleman that today is the anniversary, the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. So in that line, I would like to just share a quote of Martin Luther King before we wrap up. And I also want to thank our guests for coming in today and our hosts at the station here and all our viewers who may be watching this program. I thank you for your time today, and I hope you learned a lot about Veterans for Peace, and you might be motivated to learn more or possibly join the organization and work with the peace community. Information on contacting either the producer of this show or Veterans for Peace will be showing at the end of the viewing. And I would like to end with a quote from Martin Luther King. We must find new ways to speak for peace, for justice throughout the developing world, a world that borders on our doors. It is no longer a choice between violence and nonviolence, my friends. It is either nonviolence or non-existence. Martin Luther King, rest in peace. Thank you for your time today. Peace out.